All right, everyone. Welcome back to the All Things Aged Care Weekly Wrap-Up. My name is Anthony Nguyen, aged care recruitment expert and host of the Pioneers in Aged Care podcast. The urgent roles I'm recruiting for right now are the People Operations Manager, Pastoral Care Manager, Clinical Nurse, and Nurse Practitioner. So if you know anyone interested, please do send them my way. Next, we have Robert Covino, as I mentioned, in the sky, but on Wi-Fi, founder and CEO of Mirrors Australia. He led the creation of technologies like Mirrors Metrics and Care Minute Manager, and now Mirrors Plus, an AI-powered platform uniting software and data to streamline everything from admissions to compliance. Rounding out our hosting crew and running point for today is Owen Matheson, strategic connector and founder of Mission Critical Group. He works with owners, boards, and executives with a knack for connecting the right people, opportunity, and capital to unlock growth and drive innovation. And bringing to the stage, how's that? Coming in clutch right at the right time. Our special guest for today is a man whose journey in the sector began at the remarkably young age of 13. While most teenagers were preoccupied with school and television, he was already winning community service awards for his dedication to intergenerational connection, inspired by his very first resident, his blind 100-year-old second cousin, Dorothy. Today, he stands as a leader in one of Sydney's most vital organisations, overseeing 23 residential facilities and a vast network of home care and social housing initiatives. He's a self-proclaimed sponge for knowledge, a commercial strategist, and the Chief Operating Officer of Anchor Care Sydney, who just announced the acquisition of Infinite Aged Care, bringing their residential footprint to a total of, Dave, you're going to have to chime in here.
So 46 homes, 5,300 residents, 7,500 staff. So pretty big.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise the roof for Dave Izzard. And Rob's got that clapping sound effect going, but there may be a lag from the air.
I'm sure Rob's jumping up and down.
Yeah.
Rob's always flying high, Dave. Whether he's in a plane, he's always along the skyline watching the horizon. And likes to drop in with us mere mortals from time to time. But look, thank you so much for making time with everything going on. That's a pretty exciting, obviously, journey you've been on. We obviously want to, go into your background and why aged care, Dave, because I know you started in telco and that gift. But I also now hear that it's been a lifelong journey for you from the age of 13. So maybe we jump into that first and your early exposure to aged care and how that kind of inspired you on the journey.
Yeah, so look, Anthony's absolutely right in his introduction, and a bit of a head start there from the podcast, obviously, that we've done before. But I started my journey at 13. It was one of those intergenerational programs, which wasn't even called an intergenerational program back then. It was just a diversional therapist in a small country town deciding to come to the school and get kids involved. And they came along, they talked about it, and I thought, oh, why not? We'll give it a go. And then, as Anthony said, I went and met this lady by the name of Dorothy, who just happened to turn out to be like my second cousin. She was 100 years old. She was blind. She lived in the Lillian Brady village, which is still there in Cobar. And she had all these gadgets because she was blind that would help her pour her tea and all of that sort of stuff, which I was fascinated by. And then she was telling me all these stories about her father was the first man to own an automobile in Hillston, and all of this stuff that I just thought was great. And through her, then I started to attend the respite centre up the road. And then all of a sudden I was spending all of my school holidays there. The bus would come around and pick me up, and then I'd go and pick all of the residents up. And then, we would go and do respite in town, and won a couple of community service awards and decided that it was something that I wanted to do. And for some reason, it keeps calling me back in my life, back to aged care. No matter how far I go, I always end up back in aged care again. So it's clearly a vocation for me and something I'm very passionate about.
So you grew up in country New South Wales by the sounds of things.
I did. In Mining Town, back then it was 7,000 people. I think now it's about 3,000 people because most of them fly in and fly out these days. But yeah, it's small country town life.
I can relate, Dave. I was born in Bathurst, grew up in Orange, and we had a stint out way west of Wellington, Stewart Town. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Yeah, I know Stewart Town. Yep.
And if you go further, the Muckraw Dam.
Yep.
So
Mum still lives out in Dubbo, so get out that way occasionally. So
I have many fond memories of playing Dubbo in the regional soccer. Obviously that would have been really interesting, having that early exposure to human services as a career sector, and I note that your background is HR. Has it always been that as the primary lens in how you've kind of looked at the world? People development, etc.
Yeah, there was always a person-centeredness, and I suppose that's a word that we use a lot in aged care, around what I wanted to do and what I thought my ability was, I suppose, in some way, shape or form. I think I grew up sort of, doing aged care. I wanted to be a diversional therapist. I was determined to be a diversional therapist. I went to uni. I ended up going to uni then in Sydney. I did half of a leisure and health degree at the time, which was essentially the gateway to being a diversional therapist. But back then, I did a student placement at a place called the Ella Community Centre at Haberfield, and they were running respite programs, and their diversional therapist resigned. And they asked me to stick around and do the job. I was there on a student placement for 2 weeks, and I ended up being given my first job at 18, running 2 government-funded programs, one for aged care and one for dementia care, and then sort of went into a couple of different nursing homes after that as a DT, and then realised I was being paid $12 an hour and I was about to start a family, and that probably wasn't quite enough. So I went off into a corporate career with Optus and into HR, and then found my way via HR back to aged care again. So here I am now, and at the moment, acting group executive for Aged Care, and as we said, looking after the 23 Sydney homes. And whilst we go through this acquisition, so as part of this now, we've appointed a CEO by the name of Laurie Boxall, who is looking after all of our residential care services now. I'm reporting into him, looking after the Anglicare Sydney side. And Luke Grieve, who you guys will know from Infinite, is still looking after the Infinite Care homes in their current form.
That's fantastic. So it's a tag team approach where you run the 2 organisations in parallel effectively as you work out how you best integrate. Is that what I'm hearing?
Totally. And there's a lot of great stuff on both sides, right? I mean, we talk about doing aged care that's personal. They talk about making aged care great. So together, I think we're going to make great personal aged care. I think the trick is going to be about getting to know what the best part of each of us is. The best parts of each organisation and joining those together. And even in the due diligence process, the Infinite guys, pretty amazing team, some pretty amazing things that they do. I'm pretty excited about what they can bring into the group.
And had you had much of a working relationship or much of a with Luke and or team in the past?
I know Luke by reputation. Hopefully he doesn't know me by reputation, but I haven't asked him. But yeah, so he's got a good name in the industry, and his team do as well. People like Michael Muyes, who's his COO. Beck, who is their HR person, her and I have been on panels together back when I was an HR person. So, knocked about a bit with the team. Luke himself, he and I haven't worked together before, but obviously had a bit to do with each other throughout the due diligence process. And, you can tell somebody that's got their heart and soul in aged care, right? His story of coming to aged care is very similar to mine. In that he started quite young and, started as a carer and that sort of stuff. So, I think you've got like-minded people, really.
So tell us about, obviously, for those who aren't that familiar with the M&A or the acquisition process, how long has it taken from an initial concept to due diligence to starting to form those high-level plans around how it might all work?
Oh, look, it takes some time. I don't want to put specifics on it, and I don't want to give the game away about some of the stuff that we were doing in the industry pre and post. But
no basis, I understand, Dave.
It takes some time, and I think that, you know, for a lot of providers at the moment, you know, they're out there sort of looking around, going, well, you know, scale is important.
Yes.
From an investability point of view, from a borrowing capacity point of view, we know scale is important. So people are out there looking at, and we were no different. You know, we were an organisation that had the capital to be able to do something good, and you know, we were looking around for a bit. We come across, you know, Infinite, and then went through the due diligence process. We had a bit of help in that. You know, people like Ansell Strategic helped me out with the operations side of some reporting and stuff like that. So, you know, some really smart people in the industry, you get involved in these things. But, you know, like anything, you know, you bring finance and legal together, and that's always a fun game. There's always a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross in order to be able to get these things over the line. So yeah, it's probably taken longer than we would have wanted it to, but you know, pretty good result in the end. So we're pretty happy.
I think we're all pretty excited for it in terms of this next chapter of the industry, and how acquisitions are managed and how you maintain culture first. And it's interesting to note too, obviously, Infinite being a for-profit and Anglicare being a not-for-profit, that's an interesting sort of dynamic, and how you navigate that as well, those different models.
Yeah, and look, this is the second time that I've done that, right? So with Calvary, you know, Calvary, we purchased Japara, and now coming to Anglicare, and we've purchased an ASX listed organisation. I'm not saying that that's got anything to do with me. That was just purely by chance. But you know, it's one of those things that I know can work because I've seen it happen, right, firsthand. And one of the really exciting things, I think, you know, that Infinite Care are excited about, and that Anglicare are equally excited about, is the fact that, you know, you've got, you know, a Christian not-for-profit organisation being able to come in and help out with things like pastoral care, which, you know, Infinite haven't had it before. So that's you know, and I've seen that work so well before coming into, you know, a private organisation, and suddenly they've got these people around that can help their residents, you know, in terms of being able to sit down, have that time for a cup of tea, you know, help them with their grief, help them with just having a conversation. And staff love it, right? Because they're like, this pastoral care team, like, this is amazing. And I remember the feedback we got on that with Japara, and I think this time will be no different. I think the Infinite guys will be really excited about that.
But because you've raised it, the Calvary Japara experience, what were some of the learnings from that? Because that is a really interesting dynamic, bringing that sort of Christian principles of care and outlook, and the cultural piece that comes with that.
Oh, we're having some technical difficulties, guys. I've just lost my sound for some reason.
Oh, hi, Dave. Can you still hear me? Hello, Dave. Hi, Dave. I'll just keep talking for a moment to let you know that you can see if you can hear me. Sometimes you have to log in and log out, unfortunately. I can hear something now, Dave.
Oh, okay. We've lost Dave. I guess while we wait for Dave to come back, let's bring on our first backstage guest, Lyle Stephenson. Sorry, Lyle, you're coming on sooner than anticipated. I hope you're stage ready, because you're coming on in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Lyle.
Hi.
Hi, Lyle.
That's funny. It's nice to see you all.
Good to see you.
It's funny to see Rob up in the air, because he's always on the move whenever I see him. So it's a good thing to see. I was really wanting to ask Dave a question, but just in looking through some of his background, I have to say I learned that he's a singer in a cover band, Party Latte.
Yes.
And I'm a soprano in the Cafe of the Gate of Gospel Salvation Choir. And so
Ah, no way.
I love seeing leaders who can bring that creative side into the sector, and I just wanted to ask him about like how good is he, because he can come and, join some of our gigs when he is in town.
Well, we're going to ask you both to belt out a tune. Dave, you're back.
Sorry, team. Sorry.
Dave, a lot can happen in that small time frame. You've been outed as a singer.
Oh, is that right?
So Lyle has volunteered herself as tribute to harmonize, do a little duet as we maybe later when we close out the show.
Oh, that's throwing us under the bus, isn't it?
Yeah. Lyle, I'll bring you back on. In about another 15 minutes. But thank you for filling the gap, and then we'll get you to also introduce yourself, and you're locked in a bit. Tell us about the context around the questions that you'll be asking as well. So see you again shortly, Lyle.
Beautiful, thanks.
Lyle, see you soon. Stay tuned, guys. That sounds like an exciting end to the show. Nothing like ending with a bang, Dave, if you're up for it. I was sort of just touching on Calvary Chapel and Japara, because that's a really interesting transition, and that you would have got some key learnings from that are maybe informing the strategy. I'd love to hear some of what you kind of learnt through that experience.
Look, I think, I've done I've been involved in a couple of different acquisitions over time, and small ones and big ones. And I think whether it's a small one and whether it's a big one, I think they take 2 years.
Right.
I think it just takes that long for everybody to sort of align all of the different things that go into being one organisation. And I think the biggest learning is you've got to take that time, right? I think anybody that tries to rush a process like this and not allow teams to sort of walk side by side and understand each other before starting to sort of push them together is going to fail at this, right? You're going to end up losing good people. You're going to end up losing good IP. So I think the most important thing is to give teams the time to talk to each other, understand what they each do, and then figure out, your teams are your experts. They're the ones doing this stuff every day. You need them to be advising you and the integration team and everybody else about, hey, I saw this over there and I think it looks great. Can we have a look at it? And vice versa. And then you start to really bring some of that good stuff to the surface, and everybody feels like they're part of that journey then, right? I think if you rush it, then you can end up getting people, and that's not what we want, right?
Well, we always hear that good M&A and that cultural, the integration starts with culture and ownership. And it sounds like exactly what you're trying to achieve here is that everyone feels that they own a piece of where you're heading.
Yeah, exactly.
So
change is tough, right? Any change is tough, and people are going to deal with it in different ways. So you've just got to be ready to listen.
What would you say? I mean, change management. Obviously, I've sort of spent 20 years in M&A, so I've learned a lot of how not to. How big is change management in your consideration of things right now?
It's definitely getting some legs. As I say, we're standing up an integration management office. We've got some good people on board already, which are going to help us with that. There's no underestimation, I think, on our part that it's not the sort of thing you can do off the side of your desk, right? You can't expect everybody on our side of the fence who's successfully running 23 homes, or anybody on Luke's side of the fence who's successfully running their 22. To suddenly drop tools and go, all right, we're going to just focus on this acquisition. So you've got to bring some good people in, and then you've got to make sure that you're still tapping into those people that are experts within your field to make sure you're getting it right on both sides.
And obviously you're now going to have a larger interstate footprint as well. It's always interesting, the dynamic of the different states and how you might navigate that. Is there sort of some thinking or learnings or in terms of how you'll approach that?
Yeah, look, I think workforce strategy is really important as you start to go across states. That was certainly the difference, I think, in the Calvary days when we were, before we did the Japara acquisition, we essentially had 12 residential homes across a couple of different states, but they were all fairly stable. And then when we took on Japara, we started to get some of the more far-flung homes that had more regional difficulties, places like Albury and stuff like that, where it was a challenge to get staff, So you've got to think about those things a little bit differently. And I think for Anglicare, which at the moment our 23 homes are all Sydney Metro MM1 homes, it is going to be different. The big advantage we've got is that in Infinite, it's a really great organisation that's tackled these problems already, right? They've done some great stuff around visas and so on and so forth that helps them be able to manage those issues. So, we're going to learn some stuff along the way, and we're going to be.
That's a really interesting one. Hi, Dave. Can you hear us?
Yep, I can still hear you. Yep. Can you hear me?
That's an interesting dynamic. So sorry, Dave. We've lost you at the moment. I'm hoping you'll come back.
Owen, I think it might be on your end. No, Dave, you're good. I can still hear and see you. I think Owen.
Can you hear me, guys?
I'll keep talking for Dave, a moment, just so you know that I can't hear you at the moment.
All right, I might have to.
What we did want to ask you about is the current bed pipeline. That was the next question. But can you hear me at the moment, Dave?
Okay, I think we lost Dave now.
Not sure what to do, except the old turn it off and turn it on again, drop out and drop in. It seems to be the only fix that we have in this great technological age at the moment.
I think
we'll
bring
we
Lyle
have
back.
Still lost you at the moment, Dave. It's
and take
unfortunate.
Dave off. We'll bring Lyle back.
He's hoping you're back in a moment. We've definitely got Lyle here, warming up her vocal cords. What's your approach there, Lyle?
That's funny. I was just thinking about that. I think
now we've lost Lyle on sound as well.
Okay, I think the issue is coming from Owen's side.
Because I can't hear either of you.
All right, I'm gonna have to bring. Well, this is I don't know what's going on. Everyone's technology is dropping out, and maybe I'll be dropping out next.
It is Friday 13th today, Anthony.
All right. Well, I'm gonna blame that Friday 13th.
What else
I don't know what to do if mine starts dropping out, because there's a thunderstorm coming in Brisbane, and now I'm worried about the quality of my connection. So while we're waiting for them, Lyle, can you give us a background on yourself, background on Lockton? What do you guys do, and what's your connection to aged care?
Yeah, so I'm Lyle Stephenson from Lockton, and I work in the team that supports our care community and education clients with risk and insurance advice. And it's an area that probably nearly 10 years ago now, I've decided I'm only going to work with organizations who look after vulnerable people until I retire. And like Dave, for my sins, I keep finding myself working to support our elders as they navigate aged care. And even yesterday, when I was at the Healthcare Weekly conference at the International Convention Centre, I was surrounded by all sorts of grey hair who were attending the Seniors Week festival and answering all sorts of questions about technology. So that was kind of cool. And we're actually the brokers for Infinite Care, Dave, so at Lockton. And I've worked with many M&As in aged care in recent years, including the Japara one, which is kind of perfect as well. And through COVID and then with the bushfires, there's been a whole range of different, having to settle some massive complex claims, take through, aged care clients through the Royal Commission, et cetera. So this is an area that's really important for me. And I'm excited to see, I guess, some of the talent that's coming into our industry, into aged care finally, so people who actually know how to run boards and things with some integrity, with some board experience from non-aged care. I guess the key, can I ask my question now? Dave's back. Can you hear us, Dave, or can you say something?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep,
yes.
Loud and clear.
Fantastic.
Go ahead with your question now.
Yeah, just before, I think storms are coming in Brisbane and all sorts of things are happening. And it's one of the things that we've seen in working with our clients is how important it is to really help insurers understand different risk profiles. So especially when it's within the same organization. So, as an example, which you would probably well know, Dave, is like out of home care liability, which insurers see as a really high exposure, and then compared to aged care liability, which is a bit more predictable for them, especially now we've got so much focus on legislative reform. And so with Anglicare Sydney now going national through the Infinite Care acquisition, what's the biggest shift you expect in your overall risk profile? And does that move? Are you going to focus more on things like residential aged care or retirement living, or will community care remain central to your strategy over the next year or so?
So I mean, the acquisition was residential based. We've got a lot of growth strategy and targets happening in things like housing and retirement living as well. But at this stage, we're focused on residential care and what we're doing there. I think the big thing, and to your point, Lala, and I suppose this was the same for Calvary as well, is state-based legislation is different, right? We're very much running a New South Wales-based service at the moment, so moving into Victoria and to Queensland is different. Along the many different routes that you take that from safety legislation through to workplace legislation, so it is a little bit different in every state. So that's a consideration that I think we are going to have to be making. And certainly in the days of Calvary, I remember us working quite closely with Lockton. So I can spruik you guys, from experience and say that you guys are doing a good job.
Can you say that louder, Dave, so that my boss can hear you?
You can clip that. You clip that bit, Lyle, and then you send it around. That's your marketing material right there.
Oh, that's funny.
Dave, there's been a lot of commentary lately around that we're under-serviced in terms of the pipeline of beds. I mean, everyone has sort of been doing their best, but what's your thinking on how we're going to meet the growing demand of ageing Australians and how you're kind of positioning for that?
Yeah, look, it's a really tough proposition, not just for us as providers, but also for government, right? How do you get the capital back into the industry? How do you make the industry investable again? We've all seen the Stewie Brown figures, that sort of saying we should be at $55 per resident per day in terms of profit in order to be investable, and currently we're sitting around about 18 to 22. So it's a tough proposition. We're not going to fix it through things like ANAC and stuff like that. It's just not going to work, right? We're trying to keep up with the wage growth. We've got more wage increases coming. It's tough. I think the answer really lies back in accommodation supplement. I think more and more people are going to be coming into care without assets. We're going to end up with more concessional residents. Sitting it there, roughly $70 a day for a SIG refurbed home is not enough, right? We've got to start to look at, I think, different ways of doing that rather than just a straight up and down supplement. And the government did some consultation on that last year. I expect, and there's a bit of noise around the fact that they're probably looking at that and looking at how that's structured. I think that's probably going to be the key to unlocking some more beds. But at the same time, this acquisition is opened up some DA opportunities for us as well. We'll bring on some new beds, in the next 12 months, I imagine, or more. So that's providers need to look for those opportunities too, to go, okay, well, what else can we be doing to be more investable and to grow?
Hi, Dave. Tell us about how you. Hi, Dave. I'm trying.
It feels a bit like a COVID meeting to me today.
Yeah. Tell us about the human capital strategy. Obviously, it's a changing dynamic in terms of the needs, for management and the type of skills you're attracting. Do you see any sort of emerging changes? What does the future of your management look like? Having to navigate the more heavier compliance-driven environment.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, in the industry at the moment? And we've seen some really high-profile sort of moves around the industry at the moment at a sort of CEO level, which is fascinating, and also some people coming into the industry which may be from more diverse backgrounds, right? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think bringing in some skills from finance industry, from logistics industry, all those sorts of things can be helpful for some of the things that we need to tackle in aged care. I mean, we don't want to just keep doing things the same as we've always done. But at the same time, aged care, and particularly residential aged care, is a fairly specialised field, right? And because of the regulatory change in the past 12 months, the people that know the industry and have kept up with the industry are still the ones that you want in that middle management layer. I think they're the people that people are going to be haggling over, in times to come, particularly as demand continues to increase. We're expecting the number of residents coming in to triple in the next 10 years. You're going to need people that know how to do this stuff. So it's that layer that I'm probably most worried about. I think people are well aware that they need to grow carers, that we need to be giving options for RNs and graduate programs and all that good stuff. And everybody is sort of working on that. I'm more worried about that middle layer of management than anything else, right? Those people that have been around, seen a few of the knocks, can work with people that think differently, but still have the expertise to be able to do the job. So I think we've got to sort of foster and continue to look after those people and recognise that they are the backbone of the industry.
Yeah, love that around.
Is this where we break into song, Anthony? Or
I think, yeah, we might have to, Dave, because it's keeps cutting them out. Just while Owen is trying to sort out his volume, just a question for you on that middle management layer, because the experience that I've got across all of the different clients that we manage in for aged care is that they're pretty exhausted. And they're kind of like the change fatigue combined with the pressure of having to produce, changing care minutes, this, compliance with workforce mandates, introduction of, changes like the SIRS environment, blah, blah, blah. And, now there's going to be the new kind of the way that it has to get relicensed in the very tight timeframes that the Department of Aged Care is introducing. How are you seeing, when you talk about being worried about that middle layer, but how do you see being able to give them, I guess, some sort of way to hold on and not leave the industry altogether? Because I think it really is a big problem. And I agree with you. I think the passion, those people have such passion for this space, but it's like they're tired,
Yeah. And we talk a lot about psychosocial risks, nowadays. It's not just, people think about psychosocial risk as somebody's being mean to them if they're their manager, but it's more than that, right? It's actually about looking after people's mental health and giving them an opportunity to disconnect and have a break and all of those sorts of things. It was interesting today. We've had a couple of meetings to sort of prepare for what might happen around fuel crisis at the moment. The fact that, our staff might not be able to afford to get to work if this keeps happening. How do we prepare ourselves for that? And you can sort of see the whites of people's eyes, like, this is all just a little bit too familiar to us, that we're starting to plan for something that could be another crisis in aged care. It's so. What do we do about that? I think that's the sort of thing that we've got to really start to think about. Is how do we look after people's mental health? How do we have the right sort of flexible arrangements to make sure that people can still do this? I mean, the hard thing about residential aged care is it's a hands-on job, right?
Yeah.
So, we need people there 5 days a week, that sort of stuff. So, but how do we make sure we're giving them the time that they need and the breaks that they need to be able to spend time with family, recharge, that sort of stuff? I don't have a magic bullet for that, but I think that it's something that we all need to be conscious of, because it seems like there will be one thing after another, and we've just got through the Aged Care Act, and if this fuel crisis really takes off and starts to impact the way we do business, then it's going to hurt people, and we've got to be aware of it.
Well, we're at the halfway mark of the show. Lyle, thank you so much for jumping on. We've actually got a full house, so if we could get you back, Lyle, every week, that would be awesome. So thank you for jumping in and saving us when everyone's mics was going down. And
keep singing, Dave. I'm gonna decline to come back on because I've been singing all week and my voice is dead. And so, but I'm very glad, and we will need to practice something before we come back on, just saying, because we are professionals, we have a reputation to maintain. So thank you so much.
How about
I told Anthony
a song before, Lyle, you'll be listening in the background. Dave, would you take on the challenge of that singing moment with Lyle, or perhaps a few bars of a song? And what would you choose if that was
I told Anthony that I was going to create a jingle for him for the podcast, which I haven't quite got around to doing. I need some help with that.
I'm coming to Sydney in a couple of weeks. We'll get something sorted. But we'll
get a studio up and running.
Yeah, we've got Denise coming up next. Denise, I'm bringing you on stage and we've lost Owen. Okay, but that's okay. He'll be back, I'm sure. Denise, you're coming on. 3, 2, 1. Hello, Denise. If you take yourself on mute or off mute, sorry, and then you'll be able to introduce yourself and ask a question. Hi, Denise.
Hi. I'm not even entirely sure why.
Now I think I've lost sound again.
Oh, you're not sure why you're there. Well,
I represented a recipient of funding, and I was sent a link to this forum by someone involved in the industry who said I might be interested in it. So here I am. So I have nothing to say, actually. But thank you anyway.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate anyone who jumps on to contribute any thoughts or listen in. And if you do have a thought, or if you want to jump on again later, just type something in the box, and I'll bring you back on.
You're most welcome.
Sure.
But
thank you.
Great to meet you.
Hello.
Hopefully we can meet you in person one day.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh.
Bye. All right. I think Dave's having some difficulties there. Friday 13th
can
again.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. There we go. Dave's back. Next we have Brad Sandylands. He made an interesting post recently, and Owen's gone. Oh my gosh, we are playing musical chairs with everyone dropping in the night.
You guys are having an absolute cracker today, aren't you?
This has never happened. If this is your first time tuning in, this doesn't happen. All right, this doesn't happen. This happens 5 minutes before the show goes live, and we're all scrambling to make it a watchable product, but once we do go live, this actually doesn't normally happen. So Friday 13th, we'll chalk it up to that. Brad, introduce yourself, and what's your contribution here?
Hi, Dave. My name is Brad Sandylands from Quality Insight. We are a company that helps providers go through that revenue journey, do a lot of sales training, high everyday living builds, all that sort of stuff. And interesting, we were involved in training with Calvary and Japara in those early days. So I think I trained 300 people in that organisation around the sales transition and why Calvary was a good fit for Japara. So thanks for your input and what you were talking about before. Is there a lot of feedback on your end, you guys?
Not now.
There was a little bit.
I went too long on the preamble for Dave. He just cut off. But it's a really interesting, really good, interesting observation that he was making about the industry and how these acquisitions and mergers take place. And I'm really pleased to hear that Infinite and Anglicare are keeping their structures, because I think that's going to be important in that M&A process as they move through.
I think the feedback, I figured out the feedback.
Yes,
feedback
and
was
the
coming.
emphasis on the middle management and maintaining that continuity. No doubt you would get that completely, Brad, in terms of, just keeping that cultural focus. You can always train for systems, but getting that culture and care at the centre.
Yeah, well, it's that consistency of service too, right? It's if you have that stop-start of people coming in and out, that end consumer, which we often call favourably as the resident, so they get affected by all this greatly if it's not done properly. Sorry, Dave, I was just congratulating you guys on your merger and retaining your structures as you go through.
Yeah. It's great. It's doing better than my camera today, that's for sure.
No, everyone's struggling at the moment. I actually brought Dave on when I found out. When I saw Dave's post about the hidden costs of mergers and acquisitions, I thought, okay, I reached out to Brad saying that recent post you made about the hidden costs. I think that'd be awesome for you to jump on. So if you want to share a bit about that, Brad, and then we'll get Dave to comment on it.
Yeah, it was just more around the fact that as these mergers and acquisitions take place, obviously most of our businesses make sure that clinical and quality HR structures are all in place, but quite often the admission processing space gets lost. And for lack of a better term, we call it sales in my world, that those people end up being the ones that churn through quite quickly and leave organizations. And then that results in more pressure on facility teams to lift their game in occupancy and all that sort of stuff. So my question really, Dave, to you when I was thinking through it is, how do you see the philosophies of admissions between a non-for-profit being Anglicare and a for-profit being Infinite starting to align and sort of flourish under the new acquisition?
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what I was saying before, Brad, about making sure that you don't rush anything, right? I think, having done the Calvary Japara stuff before, did we, without talking out of school, did we make some mistakes in admissions on that? Yeah, I think we did. But that was probably because we had an idea about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And we probably needed to take a little bit longer to understand what both sides were doing and how they were doing it. So, I would say the same thing here is we're going to be careful and considered about what we do, and what the resident impact is, what the potential resident impact is in the process as well. It's important, right? And it's I don't have to tell anybody listening to this that occupancy is the most important lever that you can pull next to your care minutes. So, you've got to get that stuff right, and you've got to take the time to get it right.
Yeah. And I noted your comments earlier around that we cannot rely on ANAC and all that sort of stuff to be sustainable businesses. And I guess we do have a couple of levers, especially around higher everyday living. Where do you see those programs fit in this new merger moving forward?
Yeah, a massive piece of work for us at the moment and look, I know the Infinite guys are doing some work as well, but I haven't got under the hood of that too much. But to talk about our end for the moment, it's a real challenge for our residents, and what they're telling us is, why are you creating this two-tiered system? Because we were happy with what we had, because we had a process in Anglicare where obviously anybody that came in signed up to ASF as part of their admission. Right? So now we can't do that, and we essentially have to go back to our residents to talk to them about what they can and they can't do. So they're worried about what the impact that means for staff, because if somebody doesn't want to be on a package and then the person next to them is on a package, then somebody's getting a glass of wine, the other person's not. How do our staff deal with that? So what we've said to them, and the way that we've structured our higher everyday living, is to say, right, well, we've actually really reduced the price from what we were offering under ASF now to health. But we've done it in such a way that it actually limits quantities and stuff like that. So that's a tough message to try and get across to residents and staff, to say it's different to ASF, right? You're not getting as much as you were under ASF, but it's much cheaper. And the reason it's much cheaper is because we want as many people as possible to be on it, so that we don't end up with that two-tiered system. So that's been really tough. And that's the complexity, I suppose, Brad, about going, right, well, yeah, you can go and chase the revenue with things like higher everyday living, but the way that they're structured now actually makes it much harder to do. I think over time, we'll start to get better at it, and we'll start to offer more things. The other really big piece of feedback we've had, and I'm making some videos at the moment to go out to our residents, but what is families saying, "Oh, mum has a cognitive impairment, therefore she can't take advantage of services," which is sad, right? Because I've never met anybody with a cognitive impairment that doesn't like an ice cream or a milkshake, right? So, there's some education that's got to happen around this as well. If we're ever going to get back to the revenue that we were able to generate, or if we're ever going to start to get that consumer pay system to really work the way the government wants it to, we've got to educate the industry a little bit more. We've got to educate our consumers a little bit more about what this means and what it looks like.
Yeah, well said, awesome. And I agree. Yeah.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate having you on again.
All right, guys.
I really hope you come on every week. That'd be awesome to have your contribution. I'll bring you off now, and I'm going to bring a fellow by the name of Jatin to the stage. Jatin, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but you're on mute at the moment while you figure out your mute button. I'm going to introduce everyone to you. Now, for those who haven't been to Tasmania, specifically Devonport before you board the plane, they will tell you that the captain, as you're approaching Devonport, to raise your hand if you need a taxi or an Uber. I had my headphones on, so I completely missed that. By the time I landed, I went to the front and said, "All right, I want to order a taxi." And they said, "Did you put your hand up?" And I thought, I totally did not. So they said, "You're going to wait a couple of hours. There's no Ubers or taxis. There's not too many." So I was waiting about half an hour, 45 minutes for a taxi. Still wasn't coming. And I thought, I'm going to open my Uber app and try my luck. Jatin, within minutes, I think he's the only, I got lucky. I think he might be the only Uber driver there, picked me up. And when he picked me up, we got to chatting. He asked what I did. And I said, I recruit in aged care. And he said, he's looking for a job in aged care. And he wanted some advice. And I talked to him about that. He just got to Devonport with his wife. And I said, man, I'll do my best. Let's exchange numbers and I'll see what I can do. And then on the way, when I was checking out to go back to the airport, the receptionist said, "Have you booked a taxi the night before?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, you're not going to make your flight because you didn't plan ahead." And I thought, man, this is 4 a.m. My flight's in an hour and a half. What am I going to do? So I thought, I'll text Jatin, and hopefully, for whatever reason, I hope he's up. And he responded. Within 6 minutes, he responded. And he came and he picked me up. And I said, why were you up at 4 a.m.? He said, "You just got lucky. I just went to the bathroom. I saw your text." And he picked me up. And I said, "I am going to do my best to get you a job." So he put a question in later, which, Jatin, I'll have you ask now. I'll have you ask a question, and I'll have you introduce yourself and tell them why you want to work in aged care. Then I'll use this clip to send to everyone in Devonport that I know of, in the hopes that we can get you a job in aged care.
Thank you so much for Anthony. You appreciate for me that job. Like, I done this type of job in before. Like, lots of time people calling me directly. They have my number. So I woke up 3 a.m. in morning, 4 a.m. in morning. So like for just helping to people, not for like Uber or taxi, not money. Just sometimes like people are stuck in in hotel and he have no option because it's a small town. There's not too many options like taxi. Uber is Uber is starting by me. I'm the first guy who's starting Uber in Devonport. So
a pioneer. There you go.
Yeah. So I moved from I like before, like I moved from Brisbane to Tasmania. So coincidentally, you are looking for aged care and all things.
Yeah. So ask a question. You've got a question here which I put up on screen, but ask this question to Dave, and we'll be keen on his thoughts.
Yeah. First of all, my name is Jatin, and like I got my certificate last year, and I don't have any experience in aged care. So I'm trying to getting a job in Devonport. I applied lots of platform online. I go to directly in aged care, but I didn't get any response. They asking me experience. I said, if you give me a job, I will getting an experience. Without any job, I can't. So they asking me experience. They asking me reference. I don't have any experience. I don't have any reference. So how can I start, and how can I enter in the aged care sector without any experience in Devonport?
Yeah. It's really tough to find good carers in Tasmania. I mean, Calvary had a couple of homes down there, and was always a bit of a challenge for us to be able to find people. So I think it's just a matter of asking the right people, Jatin. I think there's still a couple of services down there. Calvary has got a couple of services down there. You should look them up and go in and see them and say, look, I'm happy to do a couple of shifts doing what you want me to do, or at least just even start by having a look at whether or not you can volunteer in the services. You could go in and start doing things like book reading and stuff like that for residents, just so that you've got some volunteering on your side as well, just so that it starts to beef up your ability or what's going on. So you said you've done a certificate in aged care, have you?
Yeah, I have a certificate 3. I have a
certificate 3.
I have a manual handling certificate, and I have my own car. I have a driving license. I have all things I need for getting a job in aged care. And as you I'm also offer for as a volunteer in first of all, if you go in any aged care with your resume, so they ask you to go online, apply online.
Yeah.
So I applied online as a volunteer in 2-3 aged care, but I didn't get any response
Well, you get your resume through to Anthony, and Anthony can get it through to me, mate, and we'll see if we can find some people down there that might be able to give you a shot.
Yep, I'll send you a CV. I'll send this clip. I'll send it to everyone in Devonport, because if not for you, I'd still be there, and we'd probably be looking for a job togetger.
I went to Devonport once when I worked for Optus, and they all said to me, as long as I was there, everybody kept saying, "Have you seen the boat turn around? Have you seen the boat turn around?" It was the big highlight, was that the Spirit of Tasmania would come in and do a U-turn in the middle of the river and then turn around again, go back again.
I'm sad I missed that. I'm sure we can check it out next time. But Jatin, please send your CV through. You may have my email. If not, I'll reach out to you after this. But thanks for being on. I'm going to bring you out, but we'll catch up with you again soon.
Go well, Jatin. Well, that's exciting. I love that. We're all about building a community of purpose here, Dave. And thank you for leaning in on Jatin's situation. We'd love to see a result here.
Yeah. We were supposed to have Kim Davis on. She was also, I actually told her that we were going to have Jatin on to talk about jobs in Tasmania. Kim Davis was going to jump on and tell us a little bit about herself, because she's looking to move to Tasmania. She's in Townsville at the moment. But it looks like she had to jump off. And then Owen's jumped off. No, there he is. He's back again.
Yes.
Owen, I think you still had some questions for Dave.
Yeah, if I may. So, Dave, apologies again about all our technical difficulties today. It breaks up a bit of our continuity. You wrote a piece recently on LinkedIn about the wave of executive departures, and we'll mention some names: Tracy Burton, Janet Muir, Claire Douglas, Rowan Mead, Stephen Muggleton, Brian Lippman. We had our very own Linda Mellors last week as well. What do you sort of read of this? Is it just a cyclical event, or do you think that the landscape is changing, and that is prompting this sort of moving of the guards?
Look, I think there's probably a couple of things to it. One is, a lot of these people have done the most amazing job through some of the toughest times in aged care that we've seen in a long time, right? So you think about COVID, you think about the Act. I think a lot of people probably said, right, I'll get through the Act. If I can just get through the Act and get things running, then it's time for me to take a step back and do something different. So I think, in fairness to a few of those names, that's probably there. The other thing too is I think, and not to cast aspersions about any of those people, but I think boards are nervous at the moment too. I think that boards are asking new questions around governance and new questions around the information that they receive, and that places pressure on people too around what the expectations are and whether they want to be part of that. Because it is different. It's different for our executives, it's different for our boards, and people need to get used to that. The registration process has started, right? People have started to have these meetings already. There's some interesting stuff coming through about that. I honestly think that once we get through this year and everybody gets through their registration process, things will really start to settle down again in the industry.
Yes.
But there's still that element of nervousness that's still there. But I think for the large part, people like Linda, some of the higher profile people like Tracy, they're probably just going, oh, it's been a long haul. It's time for me to step aside and do something else. And I look forward to seeing what Tracy's going to do next, because she's an exciting person and she's their big shoes to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love obviously about this industry, we've attracted the best of the best. There's no doubt about it. People with the care at the centre of everything they do. I mean, for those that are out there that are not in the industry yet, but are, very capable governance, risk, compliance type people, what would you be saying to them around the attraction to joining this industry and the next frontier ahead of us?
Well, look, there's never a dull day. There's never a dull day in aged care, right? It does change quite often. There's always new challenges. And I say this to nurses all the time too. Right? You can go off and be a nurse in a hospital and, just deal with one particular lane of things, and don't step outside that lane ever. Or you can come into aged care and really run the whole gamut of different things and experience. And, every new resident, every new day is a challenge, is a different clinical need that you've got to sort of get your head around. I always say that it's a much more exciting job for clinical people than having to work in a hospital where they've just got one stream that they specialise in. And it's the same for executives. I think, you've got to be a jack of so many different trades, and you learn so much about the job. And, one day I'll be dealing with, a spreadsheet with a whole bunch of numbers. The next day I'll be dealing with, a root cause analysis of somebody's unexpected death. The things are really different, and you've got to know them all, and you've got to get across then all of the regulation that sits around them. And whilst that sounds like a whole lot and people can be scared by that, once you start to get a bit of a rhythm up and you do it for a couple of years, you'll find that you get really good at it, and it's good fun.
Love that. So it's a good multitasking challenge, deep learning curve, working with great people. Tell us, what are you most excited about your new role, going forward over the next year? What are your key priorities? And then to land out, we all talk about legacy and leaving a mark on the world. What would you like to have said about you and your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a really good question. It's funny, as a 13-year-old winning this award that says, hey, you've done this fantastic job, and then you go through your career, nobody really hands you trophies anymore to say you're doing a fantastic job. So legacy is an important factor. I think, for me, I turn up to do a good job every day for the residents that I look after. What lights my fire is when I can go out, and we do these things called compass visits at the moment, where every 6 months or so I'll go and visit every single home. We will do a tour of the home. We'll talk to a couple of the staff. We'll sit down with a couple of what we call welders or wise elders, who are our consumer advisory body people within the home. And then we'll meet with all of the staff, and we'll share different ideas, and they'll produce a report for us, and we'll go through that, and we'll talk about different things. And we're halfway through another round of that at the moment, probably up to about home 17 of 23. And there's been a lot of discussion around meaningful engagement at the moment, and how carers can do meaningful engagement, different ideas we're sharing around all of that. But sitting down and talking to the residents lights my fire, right? It reminds me of why I do what I do, and I really, really enjoy that. So as long as I can keep tapping into that, I'll always be fine. But ultimately, when I retire, I would like to be able to look back, and I don't care whether it's accolades or whether the industry or anything like that, but I'd like to be able to look back and go, I changed the way that we did things like cognitive reablement in the homes that I looked after. That's a big thing that's been important to me my whole career. I started as a diversional therapist, so it's probably no surprise that it's something that I want to get right in my current role and see us roll out across our homes. People talk about dementia a lot, but I think that people don't always talk about cognitive reablement, right? How do you take somebody, give them enough purpose to start to get them to improve their clinical outcomes? And that's something that I'm really focused on at the moment with the team about how we do that well.
Love that. But before we go, is there anything else that you would like to pass on to the next generation of leaders coming through, not just in your organisation, but in terms of sort of the things that you wish you'd had passed on to you or would love them to be thinking about as they engage in this great industry?
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, if you're going to do a live stream, make sure you've got the right technology. That's probably the first thing I'd tell them. But secondly, I think it comes back to what I was just saying then. Every person within residential care has a purpose, right?
Yes.
Good care is about tapping into people's purpose and what makes them feel purposeful, whether they've got a cognitive impairment or not. We talk a lot about people that get up and what used to be called wandering. Everybody that gets up to do that is going somewhere. By the time you get to them, they may have forgotten where they were going, but I guarantee you when they got up, they had somewhere they were going, right? You've got to tap into people's purpose to make them feel right. And when you do it right and you get it right, then you find that all sorts of clinical indicators improve. Responsive behaviours reduce, all of those sorts of things, because people feel like they're still doing something useful, right? Purpose is what drives all of us. Don't ever forget that for people that are in residential aged care.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and to all our backstage guests for contributing to the conversation. Owen, we've got to wrap this up. Do your thing. Play us out.
Well, Dave, as you can see, we're building a community of purpose here. We welcome you and your peers and all of your leadership teams to come in and join us. There is an open mic for anyone to come in with any question that they might have, no holds barred, about the future of making aged care better. So as we say, at All Things Aged Care, one for all and all for one, things aged care.
All right. Well,
thanks, guys.